Hello, Cosmonauts. Movement has announced its airdrop and the distribution of its Move token. If you're eligible for the airdrop, you probably already know it, but we'll see who has benefited from the airdrop and how we can continue to take advantage of it. Finally, we'll look into what the Move token is used for. Before that, I'll introduce the project and share some thoughts on it. I'd like to start by presenting Movement as an Ethereum project, since it's a smart contract and an ERC-20 token issued on Ethereum. The founders of Movement acknowledge Ethereum as the world computer that should be leveraged, but not in the same way as other rollups do. I could simply introduce Movement the same way everyone else has, saying it's a MoveVM rollup that uses Celestia for data availability, and move on. But if you're watching this channel, it's because you want to dig deeper. If Movement has its transactions verified by Ethereum's validators, it's not really for security purposes, since there are other intermediaries that it depends on, which could fail well before Ethereum does. Data availability and storage happen elsewhere. Sequencing, pre-confirmation, and even some form of settlement take place off-chain. So, where does Ethereum fit in? Movement implements what they call post-confirmation for faster finality with its own validators. Eventually, it will send settlement proofs to its Ethereum contract for final settlement. So what's the point of this convoluted process with so many intermediaries, especially since only a small portion benefits from Ethereum's security? On the one hand, all these intermediaries are components belonging to Movement itself and will be what the Movement ecosystem relies on. That represents an economic incentive, but it's also a necessary step to capture value and achieve optimization, better finality, lower costs, and an improved developer experience. This is why Ethereum is so sidelined in the process. Okay, so why add Ethereum into the equation rather than being the only complete modular infrastructure? You'll see that it's actually better to be verifiable on Ethereum to capture value, rather than removing it entirely. In fact, that's what all sovereign chains and rollups will end up doing, making themselves verifiable on Ethereum. You have to understand that rollups automatically benefit from a secure bridge to ETH liquidity and the larger smart contract ecosystem. Many people consider that Cosmos is the origin of blockchain interoperability, but rollups were actually the first bridging technology, and probably the best. Between IBC and rollups, there's an interoperability trilemma, where you choose between sovereign interoperability and secure interoperability, with a middle ground being sovereign rollups like Movement. If Movement settles on Ethereum, it's only to benefit from that interoperability with Ethereum. It's important to understand that Movement avoids Ethereum's security to gain performance and reduce costs, yet remains modular and can still opt to pay for Ethereum security or for an alternative data availability layer like EigenDA. These choices can evolve over time for a given rollup and can also be configured that way from the start. We're dealing with people who truly know what they're doing. Movement is essentially the most minimal version of what can be called an Ethereum rollup. Sure, there's Polygon POAS, which also qualifies as a pretty minimal rollup. When we talk about Movement, we could just as easily be referring to an ecosystem, a sovereign rollup, or a technical stack. It's somewhat like the term Cosmos, a modular stack that anyone can use freely, plus an initial blockchain known as the hub. The Movement ecosystem, which they call Movement Arena, consists of 3 groups of participants that involve the Move token to varying degrees. There are also 2 or more external entities, Ethereum and Celestia, that provide security. Movement Arena ensures an attractive ecosystem by combining the Move programming language, interoperability, fast finality, modularity, enhanced security. The Move stack is centered around the Movement SDK, also called the executor. It runs both the Move VM and the EVM, allowing EVM transactions and Move transactions alike to benefit from the parallel execution advantages of Move VM. The Move stack is also a collection of tools, components, and adapters for customizing your own Move rollup, including options for sequencing, data availability, and settlement. Within the Movement Arena, there is also a decentralized shared sequencer, DSS network. This network is highly decentralizable and achieves fast finality through Avalanche's Snowball consensus. It enables various rollups to benefit from an infrastructure secured by sequencers and the Move token, as well as other tokens, which we'll discuss later. The costs of launching a rollup and a decentralized token can therefore be reduced or even eliminated. But shared sequencing goes beyond that. The state of each rollup is shared, allowing for the aggregation of ZK proofs to cut down on settlement and DA costs, and also enabling synchronous interoperability among rollups and their liquidity. This is extremely powerful because it will facilitate a shared, optimized MEV environment and intent-based systems for a better multi-chain user experience. The network effect of shared sequencing is one of my favorites. When rollups unite, they become far greater than the sum of their parts. That effect is further amplified when movement includes multi-asset staking to secure its shared sequences. The team is once again anticipating the inevitable. Anything central, what Cosmos users like to call a hub, will ultimately be secured by all the players depending on it. It's the same reason Osmosis wants to create mesh security for its DeFi hub. Movement will allow different ecosystem tokens to be staked on its consensus in exchange for network fees. We don't have much more information yet, but it shows they're on the right track. Shared security extracts so little value that it's more appealing to be secured for a central service than to sell your own security. They're the second team in the Cosmos ecosystem to grasp this concept, and I really love it. And finally, within the Move arena, we have Movement's validators and ZK provers. They offer rollups fast, slashable finality through their moderately decentralized validators. They then generate an attestation of post-confirmation to Ethereum for a longer but extremely decentralized final settlement. Without post-confirmation, rollups need to wait 13 minutes for Ethereum to validate the block that includes validity and fraud proofs, which themselves take 15 minutes and 7 days respectively to be generated. Movement is one of the most challenging projects to analyze because its modularity integrates Ethereum, Celestia, shared sequencing, ZK and optimistic proofs, a Move virtual machine programmable in Solidity, multi-asset security, a network of provers, and dual settlement. This results in a blockchain with L2-like performance and security, combined with Cosmos L1 level finality and economic security. It also functions as a distinctive mesh security hub, blending cryptographic security and economic security. Movement offers cryptographic security for rollups, while enhancing its own economic security with ecosystem tokens that are available on those rollups. Where mesh security is initially intended to share economic security among layer 1s, Movement is a blockchain that embraces the Cosmos thesis by providing a stack that encourages the development of application-specific blockchains, interoperability, and sovereignty. It contributes to the expansion of Cosmos by offering a choice of infrastructure without reducing horizontal openness or free competition. At the same time, each sovereign chain can participate in a network effect that benefits every participant. As a result, Cosmos's creative destruction is preserved even through the Movement project. That said, for those like me who want to justify holding a token and taking part in its network, it's crucial to fully understand each of the project's components to see if they make sense in their specific roles. Naturally, I'm speaking as an investor. If you're a user, you want yield and fun, and I have no doubt about Movement's appeal in the short term. You know me. I would love to delve into all the technical details. I have done so, and I have my own opinion on Movement. However, I can't give you my reasoned assessment in under an hour of video. Plus, I'd like to spare my video editor. I've already made videos about the ideal settlement and DA layers, but not yet about shared sequences, provers, execution, rollups, or types of ideal interoperability. Here's what I suggest. I'll give you my opinion, my conclusion. I know I'm repeating myself, but this is the most complex project I've ever had to understand. However, that complexity isn't a bad thing, because it stems from an extremely ambitious, carefully planned, and comprehensive product that consciously takes the harder route, breaking away from the zkEVM standard for its rollup and from the Cosmos SDK for its chain. In other words, it's not complex or heterogeneous just for the sake of it. This is what I would rather call specialization. If each layer indeed has its own specific role, why don't we have specialized operators for each of the layers? This is the entire thesis that Celestia first referred to as modular blockchains, that MegaEth might call heterogeneous blockchains, or finally, that Movement refers to as integrated blockchains. The terminology used by Movement is actually even more distinctive than the already groundbreaking modular thesis. It reflects an unapologetic ambition to control everything. Yes, we do need modular chains with heterogeneous networks and operators, but does that mean we'll end up with a token or a project name for each modular layer? We'll talk more about that in a future video on the Modular Wars, but Movement has already taken a stance. It wants to start by governing execution, then extend its governance to the base layers for all applications, app chains, or modular rollups. Movement's concept of an integrated blockchain could range from controlling execution to consensus, proof aggregation and interoperability, settlement, even all the way to a market of provers that must be highly decentralized. But integrating all these layers doesn't necessarily mean that every project and user will use them all. That's why you should subscribe and get ready for upcoming videos. Developers on Movement will soon have to make the trade-off between Ethereum or Celestia security versus Movement security. For the Move token, it's all or nothing. Despite appearances, it's directly competing with base layers like Celestia and Ethereum, both of which, despite how they might appear, are far more integrated than one might initially think. I'm referring here to Celestia's future and inevitable lazy bridging, as well as Ethereum's forthcoming native shared sequencing project spearheaded by Justin Drake, among others. In my view, these two roadmaps offer a more monolithic and promising future for both modular base layers. Each has its own motivation and narrative. Ethereum, addressing the scale the L1 challenge. Celestia, aiming to solve blockchain fragmentation. Either way, these base layers will compete with the rising star that is Movement. Still, Movement has a chance to succeed, particularly by uniting multiple tokens through, for example, multi-asset staking. I would personally limit my view of the Move token to its execution layer, so more like a high-performance rollup than an infrastructure layer. I'd first evaluate the clash of modular forces between TIA and Move across the entire vertical stack before considering Move an established infrastructure token. And what I'm saying also applies to every superchain from Optimism, Arbitrum, ZKSync, and others. It's more likely that the base layer will move up the modular stack rather than the other way around. Any attempt to capture layers downward should be seen as a push for sovereignty, effectively cosmosifying a rollup so that it becomes an L1. That leads more to separation than to integration. Unichain is a good example. Think of it more as a separation rather than a capture of Ethereum's EVM execution, but we'll understand all of this more clearly when Ethereum has its own native rollup. And Starknet is also leading the way, and just like Movement, these increasingly sovereign rollups will still want to settle partially on Ethereum for its bridge, liquidity, and security. So, to wrap up, Movement might not be worth as much as some would like to believe it is, but it's at least a robust rollup that innovates by combining Move plus EVM and draws from the best of Aptos Sui tech while leveraging modular efficiency with Celestia. All of this is backed by a solid community, creating a network effect with massive potential. We must also acknowledge that Movement's biggest advantage is its first move advantage, no pun intended. It will be the first major application ecosystem on Celestia and also the first shared sequencing layer for Ethereum. It brings with it one of the best scaling technologies, capable of competing with Solana's SVM, along with a community in Movement. Okay, that pun was intentional. They're also an excellent team that knows how to execute without reinventing the wheel, which reminds me of what we said in the previous video about Hyperliquid. There are so many rollups that have existed for years without decentralizing their sequencer, and that will need several more years before they can decentralize their prover. Movement plans to do both right from the earliest stages of its launch, and that speaks volumes about the quality of the project. Finally, we've arrived at the moment you've all been waiting for. Who is eligible for the airdrop, and how are Move tokens distributed? As with every airdrop I cover on this channel, most Cosmonautes are eligible. Potentially promising testnets and beta mainnets are introduced on our Discord and often shared on X, Twitter. I'm mentioning this because you might wonder why we only make videos on how to claim an airdrop instead of how to become eligible in the first place. It's simply that it would require too many videos, and I'd rather focus on quality, at least here on YouTube. Everything is free. My analysis, research, and even my time, since I respond to all your questions on any ecosystem. I'll leave it at that, and I do hope you'll join us if you want to be part of the community, especially if you want to benefit from a network of experienced investors, diamond-handed delegators, and professional operators. I stress this because it'll save you from spending money on courses or falling into weird marketing traps that are increasingly common. Meanwhile, it costs me nothing to share the findings that already take up about 10 hours of my day, whether or not I choose to share them. Parentheses closed. The Movedrop event distributed 1 billion Move tokens, which is 10% of the total supply, to participants who actively engaged with the Movement testnet. This group included users, builders, certain Discord roles, and even GMovers, that is, people randomly selected on X, Twitter, for posting GMOV. The testnet has 15 million active addresses and 63 application deployments. Movement is one of the few projects that chose to dilute its airdrop widely in order to reward as many community members as possible, which made the airdrop very well received. Movement offered a choice: either claim your rewards directly on Ethereum or receive an additional 25% if you wait for the L2 mainnet launch to claim them there. Most people chose the latter option, and over $314 million worth of tokens has been transferred so far. Additionally, 40% of Move is allocated to the ecosystem and community, with 10% of that unlocked at the TGE, and the remaining 30% released linearly over 5 years. Rushi, the project's founder, mentioned a special surprise for the Celestine Sloth Collection community and others, which involves incentives for participating in various missions. For anyone affected, consider holding onto your TGE airdrop to fulfill those missions. Beyond the initial airdrop and incentives, 10% of Move tokens are allocated to the Foundation. This means 22% of the total supply will be available at TGE. Movement is offering a 60%, 40% split between community and insiders, respectively. Specifically, 17.5% of the supply goes to the first contributors, and 22.5% goes to early investors. Their tokens will be distributed linearly starting from the 10th month after launch. For the token utility, in the beginning, Move tokens will be used to secure the network of validators. Remember, these validators provide post-confirmation to the Move rollups and their applications. Move tokens will be used to pay fees, including those for base layers like Ethereum and Celestia. Naturally, Move can also be used for DeFi, payment solutions, and various other types of applications. As noted, Move will incentivize ecosystem growth and development. We can expect shared sequencing and multi-staking to roll out in upcoming phases. Here's some additional financial information to help you assess the quality of the project. Even before its mainnet launch, native Movement application builders have already raised more funding than the Movement team itself. We haven't discussed it much because it's fairly common knowledge, but the development language Movement uses was originally created by Facebook engineers. Back then, Facebook increased its spending by $2.5 billion during the year Diem was created, and during the development of the specialized Move language, only to be halted by regulatory pushback. While that was a direct loss for Facebook, it's a clear gain for all builders who now use Move. Move is becoming increasingly popular thanks to the unique security and performance it provides. Investors and developers are highly optimistic about the future of this programming language. The EVM doesn't make it easy to build secure applications, and Solana's SVM provides one of the most challenging developer experiences, as writing smart contracts there is very complex.
The Move virtual machine looks good to me. It's a fine idea. Does the world need another virtual machine? Yes. All of the existing ones are terrible. Is Move the best one? I don't know. It looks okay. It looks better than the ones that exist.
Why is that interesting? Because smart contract development is extremely hard to actually get right. And, I can mention this for a fact. I have seen, I don't know how many war rooms I had to take part in back in the day where I was, building on top of Aave. The number of problems in those very large code bases, Aave is 7,000 lines of code. The number of problems they had to fix and go through, same for Compound, is incredible. People have no idea.
Move, on the other hand, is relatively new and has less educational material available, yet it brings some unfortunately unique properties to the market: a secure, formally verifiable, high-performance language that isn't overly complex. A bit concerning, right? But it's a genuine opportunity for Aptos, Sui, and Movement. Frankly, do I even need to explain why I think Movement will surpass Sui Aptos as the only architecture that makes sense today? Modular and heterogeneous? Well, there, I've said it. To be clear, Rushi is very cooperative with the two monolithic Move L1. Movement Labs raised a $38 million Series A before its mainnet and recently closed a $100 million Series B at a $3 billion valuation. The token is listed on most centralized exchanges and has a fully diluted valuation between $6 billion and $12 billion. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. As usual, you can find documentation in the description. And of course, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Take care, Cosmonauts.